A1. What is A1? This is a speedway between Vilnius and Kaunas and Klaipėda. And we were creating a special area across this territory, and the beetle is not the most graceful or the fastest flying beetle. So that speedway, in a way, is respective. And so the question through which time it would overcome this speedway from spot A to spot B. It's an open question. So the beginning started in a very interesting way, because the best known population is Kaunas Oak Park. And then we also found it in Verkei Valley at the Neris River. So these were two places. And for the connection of those spots, we were not sure how could that be done. And the purpose was to have a better situation so that the migration corridors are ensured, so that the beetles could at least have a theoretical method to migrate across those territories or between them. And many know about umbrella species, and we will hear about this word more than one time. But we took that idea and we adapted it a bit otherwise, based on indirect data, which were collected by specialists of the regional parks and observers in general in Kaunas Oak Park. And there are different species and they're inhabiting those trees, and there are many such habitats. So we analyzed that data, we entered them into our geographical information systems, and we carried out a preliminary analysis as to which places would be most valuable. So in order to sort them out and to see which ones are most valuable. And we used more layers and more information, for example, including monuments of nature, settlements. Even in winter time, when it was not possible to check easily, we would drive using a small car across certain areas. And we could guess that that place should be checked, one or another place should be checked, in order to save them later on time and fuel, in order to select the most appropriate trees. So based on all our analysis, we received a beehive in a way, and some results were bigger, others smaller, and scenarios were developed based on them as to how we could connect all those three territories. Kaunas, I mean, Dukštai Oak Park, and Neris River Valley at Verkei. So this was our main route, and it is the most logical route. And we started from this scenario, and biologically it is among the highest. When we had an idea that colleagues from Latvia identified that the beetle can fly 2 kilometers with something. So there is a theoretical possibility of how long it can fly. So no less than every 2 kilometers to create some cover for that beetle, a tree or something else, so that it could serve for the beetle. And distance is about 108 kilometers. The same 100 kilometers between Vilnius and Kaunas. And those trees do not stand in a chain. They are, so to say, substituting neighbors. If one tree is removed by the storm or by some human activities. So not far from it, there is something else that could substitute it. Because nature is nature and trees can be destroyed, habitats can be destroyed, but we tried to prepare those areas as well as possible. So all in all, we carried out an inventory of around 1,590 trees, and you see the numbers in Dukštai Oak Park 252, in Kaunas Oak Park 707, in Neris Valley at Verkiai 50. And then for the further work, we have selected 255. And the ecological corridor is 581, whereas the core areas is 1,007. And so those 1,590 trees were depicted in this way. So this coverage is quite equal, consistent, or you can go around it. So if one spot disappears, something substitutes it closer or a bit at a bigger distance. All in all, for the arboristic assessment, we selected over 1,000 trees, and they were inspected by certified specialists to decide whether measures of protection were needed or not. And for the receipt of permits, nearly 700 trees have been selected, including forest enterprises, private owners, road direction, municipalities. And all in all, or is still managed, so this number is not final, 650 trees. Here is the depiction of the permits and agreement situation for 698 trees. And so selection of trees was done carefully, and some trees look helpless, other trees seem quite healthy, etc. So those helpless trees were ignored, and we tried to select the best trees and to take most rational decisions and the key measures that we applied. So concrete and rubbish, we tried to remove that from the cavities in Vilnius and in Kaunas, and also removal of the overgrowing trees, as you see, and management works were carried out, and also protection of the zone below the tree, protection zone below the tree, so that farmers do not plow close to the trunk of the tree, and so that they don't poison the tree with their herbicides, to ensure at least some privacy for that tree. Also, management of the tally, we will speak about that later on, improvement of the soil. Sometimes it is compacted and densified, maybe in the past. And so we also tried to take that into consideration to remove rubbish, concrete, etc. And also, if there's a threat for the trees to be influenced by some negative factors, we try to neutralize those threats. And you will see how we work during the discussion. So removal of the branch is not a very, so to say, difficult job, seemingly, but actually it had to be done carefully, and we divided that to two groups, which is pruning of the tally and preparation of the tally. And so when the tree is still good and manages to stand itself, but some protection measures are needed for the purposes of prevention, if the tree can break or fall down. And so we are creating a dynamic connection so that to facilitate the tally, and in extreme cases, we make a dynamic preparation in order to ensure rational safety. So these measures sometimes seem conditionally drastic, but a tree is a live organism. It grows, it keeps itself, supports itself, maintains itself, and so we have to play a very sincere and honest game, bearing in mind physiology of the tree, to avoid unnecessary harm and to select those measures very carefully. And pruning is divided to certain classes. After drastic, and false, cuttings, we wanted to start to form the tally in a proper way and to look for the resources, and also pruning of dry branches. So dry branches are removed, and the tree cannot bear the weight, and therefore we have to remove them. And if there is a danger, also for people under the tree, for the cars. So these are the main moments that we took into consideration. And also reductional pruning when rubbing branches could be removed. And it is possible then to prevent future problems, which cost much less. And reduction pruning helps us to avoid unproportional, so to say, growing. And sometimes people reproach us and say that you want to remove everything and you overdo, so to say. That's not the case. The proportional tally is good, in particular when the winds are blowing. So if it's unproportional, branches are different, they differ, and then the tree is broken and the fungi starts developing, other problems appear, and premature aging of the tree starts. So that reductional pruning ensures the longer age of the tree. And so when the tree is greatly unproportional, then there is a danger that the tree can break in half. And we also manage the tops of the trees to make the trees safe and live. Individual branches, yes, there are some branches that have to be cut and shortened, which is not a big problem. Sometimes they are reduced or even removed at all. In this ecological corridor, we managed over 150 trees, more than one tree per each kilometer in average. And in our core areas, these numbers in Verkiai means 39, in Dukštai Oak Park 29, and in Kaunas Oak Park we will have 418 veteran trees, ancient trees, mostly oak trees, but including lime trees and also maple trees in some areas as well. Other measures in Dukštai Oak Park, we manage more trees, but based on a different principle, because measures were not very relevant for managing the tally, but the overgrowing was great. I mean, fir trees, which grew here too intensively, and then there were so many dry branches. Because before that, they grew in much more open areas, and so logging was done, and it lasted for a long time because of the remnants of the climate change. We didn't have frozen ground for some 3 years, and then when it ended, we had minus 25, and so we couldn't use our workers. And when we could, things started to melt. So there was it was a very, very small window during which we could do something useful. And we also had to remove, to destroy invasive species, which is a threat. And it is better to do earlier, because later on, all that can cost much more time and money and efforts. I hope I managed to be on time. This is the most beautiful a picture of 1929 of Kaunas Oak Park. This is how, patients look like, overgrown with trees. People and animals in trees, they all cohabitate friendly, and trees previously grew much more openly, and you see the heights of the trees. Therefore, they really deserve at least some minimum help so that they can grow and maybe there are questions.
Yra onlaine klausimas, klausia, gal galėtum pakomentuoti plačiau apie priešgaisrinę.
About fire protection. What about fire protection or against fires? In Kaunas Oak Park, quite many trees were burning, and that burning is not a consequence of thunder. Theoretically, yes, but not practically. This year, the one thunder, so to say, killed the lime tree. Actually, not killed, just injured it. And usually it is associated with rubbish. When some evil people, they set the tree on purpose on fire for the welfare of the tree, as if all that fungi and the evil is killed, etc. And people kind of forget about life, so to say, tissues of the tree. So speaking about anti-fire measures, we, first of all, we cover those cavities which are most prone to being set on fire, and the main flows in stadiums and in Kaunas Oak Park. But there is one moment, if there is no hole, so then the threat is less. But for the additional safety, we also put inside the anti-fire balls, which have to extinguish the fire automatically. And we also tried smoke detectors. But if the cavity contains dry rot, so small particles can activate those smoke detectors. So there is some problem with the accuracy. Maybe they can be used in those places which are better for that. And so that's all.
Kitas klausimas, su kokiamis invazinėmis rūšimis buvo perkamas?
Buvo su uosialapių klevu acernegundo.
Acernegundo was also managed. Thank you for your attention. Are there any plans to return back cows to Kaunas Oak Park? It's funny. I would support this idea. Why not? We will be able to discuss that, but I would support this idea. Why not? Maybe for the next project. Okay. What is the probability that the beetle will inhabit the tree which is fallen? Yeah, it will not lay eggs. Maybe it will finish its cycle, but most probably it will not lay any eggs. But because a certain temperature, illumination is needed. If those are good, then there is a probability that it will develop. But if the tree falls down, maybe then it is possible to erect it back, and so to say, to drag that existence in time. I mean, the habitat, to extend its existence. What about coordination efforts? Did you coordinate your efforts in selecting trees for logging? Yes, representatives of the community were invited, and people were informed about it. And we ourselves, we try to be very accurate and precise. And each tree that was marked with a cross, was analyzed many times. So we did preliminary numbers, and then we corrected them, and we were really very careful in deciding which tree causes the biggest stress. We spoke about that in social networks, including different videos. We try to work with the society and to show the meaning of our work. And questions expired. Thank you.